Around the age of 40, something subtle begins to change inside the body. Not overnight, not dramatically, but measurably. Muscle mass, the tissue responsible for strength, metabolism, balance, and physical resilience, naturally begins to decline. This gradual process is known as sarcopenia. In early stages, almost invisible, you may not feel weaker. Your weight may stay the same. Your daily routine may seem unchanged. But internally, the proportion of lean muscle tissue can slowly decrease while fat mass slightly increases, even if the scale barely moves. Muscle is metabolically active tissue. It burns energy even at rest. When muscle begins to shrink, your baseline calorie expenditure quietly drops. The body becomes more energy efficient. From an evolutionary perspective, that efficiency once improved survival. In modern life, it often means that the same eating habits now produce different outcomes. An exercise physiologist once summarized it simply: after 40, muscle loss isn't dramatic, it's cumulative. And cumulative change is what makes it powerful. But metabolism is only the beginning. Because muscle does more than burn calories. It stabilizes blood sugar, supports joint alignment, protects bones, and even influences hormonal balance. When muscle starts to decline, multiple systems begin adjusting at the same time. The first system to feel that adjustment is often your metabolic control, particularly how your body handles glucose after meals. And that is where the internal changes become more clinically significant, because muscle is one of the body's largest regulators of blood sugar. When it shrinks, the way your body manages energy begins to shift. Skeletal muscle is one of the body's largest storage sites for glucose. After you eat, insulin helps move glucose from the bloodstream into muscle cells, where it can be used for energy or stored for later use. In a healthy, muscle-rich body, this system works smoothly. But when muscle mass begins to decline, the body loses part of its primary glucose reservoir. With fewer muscle cells available to absorb circulating sugar, more glucose remains in the bloodstream for longer periods. Over time, this can make the body slightly less responsive to insulin, a shift physicians refer to as insulin resistance. This does not happen suddenly. It develops gradually. You may notice subtle patterns first. Energy dips after meals, stronger sugar cravings, increased abdominal fat despite stable weight. A metabolic researcher once explained it this way: muscle is not just for movement. It is a major regulator of blood sugar. As muscle shrinks, the body must work harder to maintain glucose balance. Insulin levels may rise to compensate, encouraging cells to store more energy. And when storage increases while muscle demand decreases, fat accumulation can quietly accelerate, particularly around the midsection. But muscle loss influences more than metabolism. It also changes how stable and supported your skeleton remains. Because muscle is not only a mover of bones, it is one of their most important protectors. And when muscle strength declines, your joints and bones begin carrying a greater share of mechanical stress. Muscle does not only create movement, it stabilizes it. Every time you stand, walk, or lift something, your muscles act as shock absorbers. They guide alignment, reduce joint strain, and protect the skeletal system from uneven force. When muscle mass begins to decline, that protection weakens. Joints may start absorbing more mechanical load than they were designed to handle alone. Subtle instability can develop, not dramatic enough to cause immediate injury, but enough to increase wear over time. Orthopedic specialists often observe that reduced muscle strength is associated with greater joint stress, particularly in the knees, hips, and lower back. At the same time, bones depend on muscle tension to remain strong. Muscle contractions create small mechanical forces that stimulate bone remodeling. Without consistent muscular pull, bone density can gradually decline, increasing vulnerability to conditions such as osteoporosis. A musculoskeletal researcher once put it clearly: muscle and bone are partners. When one weakens, the other follows. This partnership explains why individuals experiencing muscle loss may also notice reduced balance, slower recovery after physical strain, increased stiffness, higher fall risk. The change is rarely abrupt. It is cumulative. And while joints and bones feel the mechanical consequences, another system experiences a quieter shift, one that influences how energized you feel each day. Because muscle is also deeply connected to mitochondrial activity. the tiny structures inside cells responsible for energy production. When muscle shrinks, your body's total energy generating capacity changes as well, and that can influence how resilient you feel, physically and mentally, as the years progress. Muscle tissue contains a high concentration of mitochondria, the cellular structures responsible for producing energy in the form of ATP. The more lean muscle you carry, the greater your body's overall capacity to generate sustained physical energy. When muscle mass decreases, total mitochondrial density decreases with it. The result is not immediate exhaustion. It is a gradual shift in endurance. Tasks that once felt effortless may begin requiring more conscious effort. Recovery after exertion may take longer. Stamina during long days can feel less stable. A cellular biologist once explained it succinctly. Muscle is one of the body's largest energy-producing tissues. When it shrinks, total energy capacity shrinks with it. This does not mean fatigue is inevitable after 40, but it does mean the margin for physical resilience narrows if muscle loss continues unchecked. There is another layer to this change. Muscle also acts as an endocrine organ, releasing signaling molecules known as myokines during contraction. These compounds influence inflammation levels, metabolic regulation, and even brain health. When muscle activity declines, these protective signals decrease as well, which means muscle loss is not only structural, it is biochemical. Yet perhaps the most overlooked consequence is psychological. Because strength and physical capability are deeply linked to confidence, independence, and long-term functional freedom. And when muscle gradually fades, the body begins adjusting to a slightly more conservative mode of movement. But the most important question is not what happens when muscle declines. It is what happens when you decide to preserve or rebuild. After 40, muscle is no longer just about appearance or strength. It becomes a predictor of long-term independence. When lean mass declines steadily, the body shifts toward a more conservative physical state. Movements become smaller. Posture subtly changes. Balance reactions slow. Over years, this can influence how confidently someone climbs stairs, carries weight, or recovers from a stumble. In clinical medicine, muscle mass is increasingly viewed as a marker of biological resilience. Lower muscle levels have been associated with greater vulnerability during illness, slower recovery after surgery, and reduced metabolic flexibility. A geriatric specialist once summarized it carefully. Muscle is insurance for aging. The more you preserve, the more reserve you have. What makes this powerful is reversibility. Unlike many age-related changes, muscle tissue remains responsive to stimulus well into later decades of life. Strength training, adequate protein intake, quality sleep, and consistent movement can stimulate muscle protein synthesis, the process through which new muscle fibers are built and repaired. This means muscle decline after 40 is not destiny. It is a trend, one that can be slowed, stabilized, or even partially reversed with the right signals. And once you understand that muscle influences metabolism, blood sugar, joint stability, bone strength, energy production, and long-term independence, the question shifts. Is muscle loss normal after 40? But how much of it am I willing to accept because aging is inevitable? But accelerated muscle decline doesn't have to be.